Welcome back to our CAEL reading series. Last week, we started looking at some reading strategies in order to help us locate information within a text as quickly as possible. Today, we're going to continue to develop these reading skills, but in a more academic setting. We're going to actually answer a real question from a past CAEL test. So what we're looking at right now is a question on this past CAEL test. And we're going to approach this today as if we were writing the test itself. So the very first thing we need to do whenever we're given an assignment in class is we're going to preview the page. So when we look at the top of this page right away, we can identify what section of the test we're working from. So this is identified as part 2 of the CAEL test, which is always the short reading section. It's really important to note how much time we have to complete this section. So students who took this test were given 5.5 minutes to quickly read the text that we see on the left side of the screen and to answer 3 questions about it. Now, within such a short amount of time, it would be impossible to read the text very slowly and carefully, word for word. And that's why, as readers at university, we need to develop some efficient skills that will help us to locate the information that we're looking for very quickly, so that we can answer the questions in the time allotted. So the next thing we're going to do once we've previewed, we've looked at our page and we can see how long the text is. This, by the way, is not quite the entire text. We can only fit this much of it on our screen. And to note how many questions we have to answer, we're going to do a very quick skim of the text itself. So we're taking maybe 20 seconds for a text about this length to quickly let our eyes fall over the page and to pull out any keywords or important ideas that will simply just let us know what we're looking at before we begin answering our questions. So in the top of this text, my eyes pick out these 2 important words that are underlined. We see that this text is something to do with a course, maybe a course of study, and some reports as well. So this is about an assignment, I presume, that we would do in class. My eyes also pick out the bulleted points that are listed down the page, and I notice that beside each of these bulleted points, there is a heading. So I'll just take a quick moment to skim read those headings. So again, I understand a little bit more about the content or the overall general meaning of this text before I look at some specific questions. So I see here that I've got title, introduction, materials, method, results, discussion, and conclusion. So this is probably some sort of a science class if I'm doing reports with a method and so on. Now, having a look at the right-hand side of the page, if you are taking CAEL specifically, this is where your questions will always be located. There are a couple of different formats of questions. So the first type you might see would be typical multiple choice. You might also see some drop-down menu options as well, where you would click on that little green arrow to open up your answer choices. And you could also see some click and drag activities as well. This is the 3rd question on this particular test. And this is the question actually that we're going to work on today. So as we talked about last week, whenever we're given a text, we certainly want to make sure we understand exactly what it is we're being asked to find. So looking at the question here, we're going to notice the important words. So I've highlighted in yellow here the words that tell me what I need to do to answer this particular question. So I have to match the terms with section headings. So these important words from the question we can refer to as keywords. So I notice then that those terms are here. There are 4 of them and they're listed at the top. So the section headings then are located here in the chart at the bottom. And because I've already previewed that page, I've already skimmed through those titles, I recognize these 4 specific section headings. They're located right here in the text. So I've underlined them in red, so we know exactly now which part of the text we have to look at. So again, to find the terms within the text itself, I would be wasting my time to just start looking at the entire text, the entire page. I only want to look at those 4 little sections. So I've narrowed my focus and I know where to start looking. Remember, time is ticking. So if I've got 3 questions to answer and only 5.5 minutes to do so, I don't really want to spend more than 1.5 minutes per question. So I can make sure I finish this whole question before the time is up. So I'm going to start by looking at the first term on the page there, on the question side, and that term says, state your hypothesis. So I notice right away this word hypothesis as a key word. It's an important word that I'm going to try very hard to locate in the text under those 4 sections that I've identified. So I'm going to scan now, meaning I'm letting my eyes look at those 4 sections in the text, and I'm only looking for the word hypothesis. I'm not going to read any other words on the page. I want to be quick here. I notice it fairly quickly right at the top of the introduction section. So now that I've at least matched up those keywords from the question to the text, I'm going to take a moment to read the part of the sentence in the text itself where I found this keyword. I just want to make sure that this is indeed the correct answer. That word hypothesis could be found in another section. So I want to start here and just double check that everything makes sense. So in the text, I notice here it says you must also include a hypothesis. In the question term, I see state your hypothesis. Now those 2 sentences mean pretty much the same thing. It's just that the wording has been changed, that the meaning hasn't. So this is what we call a paraphrase. And on many tests that you'll do in school or many readings, activities that you'll complete, you'll have lots of paraphrased ideas to learn. So we need to understand the meanings are the same. And we're fairly certain now that we can match that first term to the section introduction. Now, just to be certain, if I've got the time, I might finish reading the sentence where I found the word hypothesis in the text, again, just to reassure myself that I'm on the right track. So when I finish reading the sentence in the text, I see here that a hypothesis is a statement indicating what you think will happen in your experiment. So that just defines the word for me, but it also indicates to me that my hypothesis comes first before I complete that experiment, which is another good indication why it would fall in the introduction as we're introducing the whole piece. So I'm confident now that this first term belongs under the heading introduction. So on the test, you would use your mouse to click that term and move it down to the chart on the bottom here where it says introduction. So I'm finished now with that whole heading. So I can remove it from my eyesight on the text. I don't need to look at it again. I've only got 3 section headings remaining. So I've narrowed my focus to try to match up the following 3 terms. Now I'm going to use the same strategies. I'm still going to work with keywords and try to match them between the text and the question, but I'm going to do the second one in the opposite fashion. Instead of starting with the terms on the right-hand side, I'm actually going to look at my text because I notice that materials, that next heading, it's got a very, very short sentence after it. So it's very easy for me to read that through quickly. So I see in the text something about equipment and supplies. These are the keywords that are just popping off the page at me. So I'll look now back at these 3 terms that are remaining, and I'll scan here now to see if I can find words that mean the same as equipment and supplies. And sure enough, very quickly, right at the bottom in this final term listed, I see these 3 keywords. I notice what was used in the experiment. So if I go back to my text and just now read the entire phrase, just to make sure I've got the right idea, it says here to indicate the equipment and supplies used. And here I've got specify what was used in your experiment. So once again, these 2 terms, these 2 sentences or ideas, they mean the same thing. They're paraphrased. They're just using different words to express the same idea. So I'm very confident then that that third or final term, I guess, on the list on the questions page does indeed match the materials heading. So like I did before, I'm going to click and drag that final term under the materials section on the question side. So now I'm finished with 2 of these 4 terms. So I've got 2 left. So again, I'm narrowing my search even further on the text. I'm left with method and results. Now that method paragraph's really long. So I'm going to go back to the terms on the right-hand side just because it's easier to skim read here and pull out some keywords. So I notice information and gathered as important words in this term. So I'll go back to the text on the left and I'm going to look carefully, scan with my eyes to see if I can find words that mean the same as information or gathered. I'm going to look at this method section, partly because it falls first in the text, but also partly because when I'm gathering information, I'm actually conducting the experiment. I'm carrying forward with the process or procedure. So method for me just makes a logical choice to start with my search. So when I focus my attention there on the method section, I do notice these keywords. I see data was collected. Now I know that data and information mean pretty much the same thing. And to collect something is very similar again to gathering that information up. Again, I'm confident that I've got a match here. I just happen to also notice very quickly that in my term, it's how the information will be gathered. In the method, it's how the data is going to be collected as well. So once again, I'm confident that I've got a match here. So I'll take that term and I'll put it under the method section at the bottom of the page. All right, we're almost finished now. We've got one term left and one heading left. Now, if I was almost out of time on the test, I would just drag that final term into the box below and finish it before the timer hits 0. But if I look up at my timer and notice that I do have a little bit of time left over, I'm going to quickly double check that I've got this answer correct. If these two match up, then it gives me more confidence that my entire question is complete. So I'll do that now. I'll look at the term and I see here the important or keywords are observed data. So I've only got one section left. So I have to look at the results section here in the text. So I'll look for the words observed data. And there's the word again. This is a direct match. It's not even a synonym. It's not even a paraphrase. So I got a little bit lucky here. I'll read over the information again from the term, and I see that I'm showing this data. In the results section in the text, I'm seeing here that I'm presenting the data. So the word present and show are synonyms. They mean the same thing. Now, synonyms and paraphrases are generally the same concept. Just note that a synonym is when the two words themselves mean the same thing. A paraphrased idea is when you have a group of words, maybe part of a sentence or a complete sentence that expresses the same idea as another group of words. But it's the same concept. The meaning hasn't changed. So that's a good thing. It reassures me that I must have answered the rest of these terms correctly in order to fit that fourth and final one into the results section at the bottom. So we're finished now with this question. On a testing situation, I know we've talked through the answer, which takes time to do. On a testing situation, the time it would take you to match up these keywords and click and drag all of these terms to the box, I'm hoping would not take you more than a minute and a half to complete. Again, you have to make sure that you're finishing all 3 questions or however many questions there are, and you need a little bit of time to skim read the text as well. So always plan your time accordingly. It's on a testing situation for sure. So let's just review what we did today again. These are the strategies that you would use for any reading text at all, whether it's a testing situation or a homework assignment. I would advise that you preview the page first. So decide how long that text is and understand how much time you have. Time management is crucial if you're going to finish the question. You'd skim the text next just to get a very broad sense of the content. So what is it about and how is it organized? In this text, we noted that it was assignments for probably some sort of lab or science-based course. And we saw as well those bulleted points with headings. And that helped us actually to answer the question that we chose to focus on today. You'd identify keywords in the question and then scan the text for those keywords. You might be able to do a direct match. More likely, you'll be looking for synonyms or paraphrases as well. Okay. Remember, you can also start by noting the keywords in the text and scanning through the question words too. You can always do it in that order, but you're still matching up keywords. Once you've found the keyword, it's a nice idea to read the phrase or even the full sentence within the text wherever that keyword was found. You want to double check that you do indeed have the right place in the text and the correct information to actually answer the question. So when you've decided that it makes sense, you would choose the answer and be confident that you've answered it correctly. Next week, we're going to continue to practice our reading skills by answering other questions on this CAEL practice test. Join me then.